There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you, honorable members. You may be seated. Order, order, honorable members. Order. Does any member wish to give a notice of a motion? The honorable member Kimpi. Notice of a motion. Or the honorable member Kimpi, over to you. Honorable members, it's a notice of a motion. Then after the notice of the motion, we'll then go to the notices without motions. Thank you very much. Honorable Klimby, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move a motion on behalf of the African National Congress that the Council debates the role of Mayor Patricia de Lille in trying to cover up allegations of corruption in the freeway for shore tender and the 43 million loss in the My City bus service fare system. In a sworn affidavit, Mr. Craig Ketson, the executive director in the mayor's office, has made shocking allegations against Mayor de Lille. He apparently tried to notify the mayor about the attorney's opinion on the 31st of August, and the mayor asked him to make sure that the issue go away and should not reach council. On the 6th of September, he told de Lille he was worried about the concerns expressed over Whitehead's role in the losses relating to the My City matter. And the mayor alleged that the commissioner was being unfair, singled out because of allegations made in other forensic reports about other directors had not been submitted to the council. I so moved.
Thank you, Honorable Member Klimby. I noticed the hand of Honorable Gaylor.
Oh, okay. Motion. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House.
Honorable Gaylor.
Oh,
that one is still coming.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I hereby move without notice on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House notes that 3 notorious Eastern Cape hitmen who killed 5 people in a space of 3 months have been sentenced to a life in prison, while 3 of their accomplices were sentenced to 35 to 40 years imprisonment. Further notes that the South African Police Services has been working tirelessly on this case for 7 years.
Sorry, Honorable Gaylor. Honorable Matlashuping.
Honorable Chair, I want us to be procedural. We are dealing with notices of motions. Then later, notice without motion will come. Just sit down, allow people who must do the motions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gaylor. That is what we've been trying to explain all along. Honorable Matlashuping. Honorable Gaylor, which motion are you moving?
Chairperson, my friend,
Honorable Gaylor, which motion are you moving?
Okay, notice.
It's got them
Tiermakar.
Yeah, but he's sorting them now, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Just keep quiet, man.
Please start from the beginning.
I hereby move a notice of a motion that the House notes that the golden handshakes had been given and used to purge public servants who are no longer in good books. Executive. Acknowledge that there is a great urgent need to fight corruption and use public money sparingly in support of sustainable social economic development. Believing that the golden handshake syndrome is not consistent with the need to build a developmental state that is responsible and capable to driving development, moves that the House in its next sitting debates the eradication of golden handshakes in public sector. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gaylor. I also notice the hand of Honorable Mhlanga.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the ANC, I hereby give notice that in the next sitting of the Council, I shall move that the Council one notes with utmost concern that the extensive growth of the debt owned by municipalities, which is estimated around 117 billion. Further notes that the National Department owe municipalities 2.3 billion, which while provincial department own municipalities 3.1 billion, and that municipalities themselves owe an estimated amount of 34.6 billion to creditors, of which 77% is owned to ESCOM and water boards. And debates, intergovernmental debts and the non-payment of service rendered between the various spheres of government and across government department. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The last hand is for Honorable Magwebu. Oh, okay, thank you very much. We move forward, Honorable Members. We are now on the motion without notice. The Honorable Sfako, you'll be the first one. Continue, Honorable Smith.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that the Council notes that the Land Bank has beaten difficult economic conditions, worsened by adverse weather conditions, to report a 57.3 million profit for the half year to September 2017. Also notes that the bank is a specialized agricultural financial institutions that is wholly owned by the state, although it received no subsidies from the government. Further notes that the bank's profit for the 6 months was 71.8% higher than the profit from the matching period a year ago. Therefore, congratulations to the land banks on its strong financial performance, and hope that it will intensify its program of supporting to agricultural development. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sifako. Is there any objection to the motion, Honorable Members? Thank you very much. The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Chief Whip.
Honorable Chairperson, allow me to rise without notice that the House notes with great sense of loss the passing away of the late Comrade Muchubela Jacob Wesi Siekwi on that fateful day of the 14th November 2017. Further note that Comrade Wesi spent his entire life in service of the people of South Africa under the umbrella of the African National Congress. Comrade Wesi left South Africa in 1960 to join the ANC mission in exile, serving under different capacities. Whilst in exile, Comrade Wesi attained a number of academic qualifications, including PhD in nuclear physics in the former Soviet Union. Upon return from exile, he served the ANC under different capacities, including as Deputy Secretary of the Interim Leadership Corps of the ANC Free State. He was laid to rest on Saturday, 24 November, in an official funeral in Bloemfontein. I therefore move that this August House sends its deepest condolences to the family of Comrade Wesi and the ANC. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable members, is there any objection to the motion? Thank you very much. The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Magwebu.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move without notice that the Council knows that on Sunday, the 26th of November, 2017, in Las Vegas in the USA, a 22-year-old proudly South African Miss Demi-Lee Nell Peters was crowned Miss Universe 2017. That we congratulate Miss Nell Peters for her phenomenal achievement and wish her success in her future endeavors. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Magwebu. Honorable members, is there any objection to the motion? The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Member Mteto.
On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move, without notice, that the Council note with sadness that the leader of the Nazareth Baptist Church, Inkosi Vela Shembe, has passed away on Thursday, the 23rd, 2017. Also note that Inkosi Shembe died of natural causes at his home in Potchefstroom in KwaZulu-Natal. Further notes that the final logistic arrangement for the funeral have not yet been done, and further development will be made public on Wednesday. Therefore, send our heartfelt condolences to his family and the church at large, and wish them strength in these difficult times. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Mteto. Is there an objection to the motion? The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Member Gaylor.
I hereby move without notice on behalf of the UDM that the House notes that 3 notorious Eastern Cape hitmen who killed 5 people in a space of 3 months have been sentenced to life in prison, while 3 of their accomplices were sentenced to 35 years imprisonment. Further notes that South African Police Service has worked tirelessly on this case for the past 7 years. Commends SAPS for the job well done in helping keep the society safe from dangerous criminals. Further commends the Eastern Cape criminal justice system for the heavily punishing these offenders. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Member Gaylor. Is there an objection to the motion? The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Member Zwane.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that Council 1 notes that the period of 25th November to the 20th December marks 16 days of activism against gender violence campaign, which is an organizing platform by individuals and organizations around the world to call for the prevention and elimination of violence against women and girls. 2, Council further notes that the theme of the campaign for 2017 is, and I quote, "Leave no one behind, end violence against women and girls," close quote. This theme reinforces the Unite campaign, Unite to End Violence Against Women initiative launched in 2008 by the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to a world free from violence against all women and girls around the world. And thirdly, Council takes this opportunity to express its support to the 2016 days of activism against gender violence. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Zwane. Is there an objection to the motion? The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Member Singh. Oh, okay, thank you. Honorable Smith.
Thank you, House Chair. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move without notice that this House congratulates the now DA-led Morimole Mokgopong local municipality under the political leadership of the Mayor, Councillor Marlene Vermaak van Staden, on turning around the previously bad-governed municipality under the ANC that left it basically bankrupt with over 250 million rand in debt. Of particular importance is the Council's appointment of two new Section 56 managers on the 26th of June and confirmed appointments on 17 November with the Manager of Corporate Support Services starting on the 1st of December 2017 already. Further, 3 boreholes have been connected, a new pipeline that was installed to replace the old pipeline, and a new pressure tower that has been built. Further, the main road through Valwater was resealed, repainted, and received new signage. And the main road through Mokgopong have been redone with new robots, sidewalks, and signage, and it is of world class. I invite Limpopians to drive through, get off the N1 and drive through Mokgopong to experience the DA difference. The Morimole Mokgopong local municipality is an upcoming rising star and has an example
Honorable Smith,
to all other
the Honorable
municipalities.
Member, your time has expired. Your motion will now become a notice of a motion and will be printed in full on the next order paper. The Honorable Member Dlamini.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I move without notice on behalf of the People's Movement, the African National Congress. I hereby move without notice that Council notes that the Department of Water and Sanitation has issued notices to 30 defaulting municipalities demanding that they make arrangements to pay their share of 10.7 billion owed to various water authorities before the 8th of December. Further notes that 30 municipalities are amongst the 186 local government structures that owe money for water already supplied and used, and that close to 7 billion of this debt is older than 120 days, and takes this opportunity to call on municipalities to work with the Department of Water and Sanitation to find a long-lasting solution to the astronomical debt owed to water boards for the provision of water. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dlamini. Is there any objection to the motion? Thank you very much. The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Mnakedi.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move without notice that the Council, 1, knows that today marks 37 years since Oliver Regional Kaizana Tambo declared the African National Congress a signatory to the Geneva Convention of 1949 and Protocol 1 of 1977 on the humanitarian conduct of war at a ceremony held at the headquarters of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva on the 28th of November 1980. 2, further knows that to this day, the Geneva Convention of 1949 and its additional protocol remain at the very core of international humanitarian law that regulates the conduct of armed conflict and limiting the effects of armed conflict, specifically to the protection of innocent civilians who are not taking part in the hostilities, and those who are no longer participating in the hostilities, such as the wounded, the sick, and the shipwrecked soldiers and prisoners of war. And 3, as part of our national honor of the vigilant and visionary leadership of OR Tambo and his contribution to the liberation of our people, takes this opportunity to reaffirm South Africa's commitment to the Geneva Convention of 1949 and Protocol 1 of 1977 on the humanitarian conduct of war. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Is there any objection? No. Thank you. The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Lund.
Good day. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that this House congratulates all the municipalities who've shown a commitment to the voters by handling their finances in such a manner that the AG awarded them clean audits. With 80%, the DA-led Western Cape had the highest proportion of municipalities with clean audit opinions in 2015-16, followed by the KZN with 18% and the Eastern Cape with 16%. The poorest performing provinces, unfortunately, are the Northwest, the Northern Cape, and the Free State. Gauteng was the only province.
Order, Honorable Oliphant.
Gauteng was the only province with 100% of the municipalities receiving unqualified audit opinions, with the exception of the DA-led Midvaal, the only municipality to obtain a clean audit. The Western Cape performed exceptionally well. This House further takes special notice of the Swartland municipality, who recently got notified that they would receive their 7th consecutive clean audit. The same goes for the West Coast District Municipality. The Mossel Bay municipality will get their 6th consecutive clean audit. That this House thank them and say keep up the good work.
Thank you, Honorable Lund. Is there any objection to the motion? In light of the objection, the motion may not be proceeded with. The motion without notice will now become a notice of a motion. Order, Honorable Smith. The Honorable Kaula.
Ngiyathokoza sihlalo hloniphekile, on behalf of Inkatha Freedom Party, I move a notice without motion that the House applauds the consistent 100% attendance of the KwaZulu-Natal delegates in this House, as can be reflected by the attendance today, in spite of the non-attendance by some provinces like Free State with 1 delegate, Northwest with only 3 delegates, and others. We want to say to Ubaba Mthethwa and KZN, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kaola. You were not moving a notice without motion. You were moving a motion without notice. Honorable members, is there any objection? In light of is there an objection? Okay, the motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Oliphant. Honorable Oliphant.
Honorable Chair, on behalf of the African National Congress, I move the motion without notice. I hereby move without notice that the Council notes that today marks 66 years since the death of Lamek Konavaki Kadali Muvamba on 28 November 1951. I further note that Lamek Konavaki Kadali Muvamba, who was also known by his adopted name Clement Kadali, was born in April 1896 near the Bandawe Mission Station in the then Nyasaland, which is now known as Malawi, and migrated to South Africa in 1915, where he became a prominent leader of the Communist Party of South Africa, now as ACP, and the provincial organizer of the African National Congress organizer in what is now called the Eastern Cape Province, and take this opportunity to pay its homage to the ferocious giant of the fight against cheap labor and the oppression of our people. I so move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Oliphant. Is there any objection? Thank you. The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable members, do we still have further motions without notice? Thank you. Then the Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Appropriations, correspondence from the Executive Mayor of the OR Tambo District Municipality requesting intervention in the stopping of the municipal infrastructure grant allocation to the municipality.
Thank you very much. I shall now call on the Honorable C.J. De Beer.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, the committee report as follows. A letter was written by the Executive Mayor of OR Tambo District Municipality in the Eastern Cape, requesting the NCOP to intervene in the stopping of the district municipality's infrastructure allocation. Upon initial inquiries, National Treasury informed the committee that, following extensive consultation with the Department of Cooperative Governance and the district municipality, a decision was made to stop the transfer of 90 million rand of the municipality's MIC allocation of 609 million in the 2016 financial year. Reasons given for the stoppage included improper reporting by the district municipality, non-registration of projects, and the slow take-up of projects. The Select Committee convened a meeting which was attended by the Executive Mayor, accompanied by 2 MMCs for Finance, Water and Sanitation, and officials from the district municipality, the Eastern Cape MEC for Finance and his officials, National Treasury officials, officials from the national and provincial departments of cooperative governance, and officials from the Municipal Infrastructure Agent, MISA. Objectives of the meeting included whether the stopping of funds was in line with the Division of Revenue Act, what were the challenges within the municipality that led to the allocated MIC funds being stopped, what are the implications of this action on service delivery, whether measures and steps were taken by both National Treasury and the Transferring Department to support and strengthen the capacity of the municipality as envisaged in Section 154 of the Constitution. What measures were put in place to mitigate against any negative impact on service delivery within the municipality because of the funds were being stopped? What are the options available to the committee in dealing with this matter? Are there lessons to be learned from this exercise that could help to avoid similar incidents in future? The committee had the following observations. The stopping of funds was in line with the provisions of the Section 19 of the Division of Revenue Act, which stipulate that National Treasury may, in its discretion or at request of a transferring officer, stop transfers listed in Schedules 4 and 5 pertaining the anticipated underspending on programs or allocations in the financial year by a municipality. The issuance of non-compliance letters to the district municipality by the Department of Cooperative Governance indicated that the municipality was not ready to implement its MIC projects at the beginning of 2016-17 financial year. Despite constant reminders from the Department of Cooperative Governance for the submission of MIC Project Management Unit expenditure, the municipality did not comply, and therefore any expenditure on Project Management Unit cost would be non-compliant. There were challenges within the municipality. MIC projects for 2016-17 were not yet confirmed as of 7 June 2016. Non-compliance with monthly reporting on the performance of the MIC. MIC spending was below 40% by 30 December 2016, and MIC expenditure figures captured by the Department of Cooperative Governance and National Treasury were different, and this was a major issue, were different from what the municipality had in its records. It would appear that inaccurate MIC reporting is related to capacity constraint in the finance and project departments. Yes, underspending compromises service delivery, and the stopping of funds unfortunately worsens the situation. All the same, inaccurate reporting also has the potential to compromise value for money spent and might lead to negative audit findings related to irregular and unauthorized expenditure. What measures were taken? Both the national and provincial treasuries, as well as the national and provincial Department of Cooperative Governance, waited too long before intervening, despite warning signs that there were capacity challenges within the municipality. The committee, however, noted with concern the failure by municipal officials to attend meetings aimed at addressing challenges within the municipality. In addition, there is no indication that the municipality requested support. Measures to put in place to mitigate against any further negative impact on service delivery. The Minister of Finance indicated that although the stopped funds have already been reallocated, National Treasury would consider additional allocations to the municipality in the new financial year, while the first transfer would be increased to accommodate any shortfalls. Recommendations. Steps should be taken and measures put in place by both the national and provincial treasuries, as well as the national and provincial Department of Cooperative Governments, to support and strengthen the capacity of the municipality as envisaged in Section 154 of the Constitution. Both the national and provincial treasuries, as well as the national and provincial Department of Cooperative Governance, should put in place adequate verification systems on municipal infrastructure grant spending. The National Treasury should consider additional allocations to the municipality in the new financial year after actual spending has been determined. The municipality should conduct a skills audit amongst its staff to ascertain whether the senior officials and all other financial officials meet the prescribed financial management competency levels. By failing to report correctly, the municipal manager and senior managers, as well as all relevant officials, committed financial misconduct. The municipality should ensure that officials responsible for the inaccurate reporting are held accountable for their poor performance. National Treasury should consider strengthening the provisions of the Division of Revenue Act by including the following clauses. Make provision for the need of approval by Parliament when funds to municipalities are stopped, as is the case in Section 2163 of the Constitution when funds to a province are being stopped, including clauses that strengthen the consultation process regarding the stopping and withholding of funds. Honourable Chairperson, also on the 20th of July 2017, we received a progress report on the progress made in this municipality, and the Select Committee for Appropriations will do a visit to the municipality early in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable De Beer. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declarations of vote if they so wish. Honourable members? Okay, the Honourable Member from the DA. Sir Blanche.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the Western Cape, it is with dismay that we continue to point out year on year the continuous decline of service delivery to our people. National Treasury's declining influence over the budget has become even more evident under the current government and its leadership. The Western Cape takes note of the revised consolidated deficit projections for 2017-18. The deficit has now increased further from 3.1% of GDP to 4.3% of GDP. Not a very good story to tell. The Western Cape highlights the fact that not enough focus has been placed on the equitable share to provinces. Municipalities throughout the country continue to falter in their commitments to Eskom, which have huge ramifications for business and the economy. We further reiterate the serious and urgent support required relating to severe drought in our own province, for argument's sake. Chairperson, the Auditor General has also revealed the performance of the municipalities in terms of their audits. Operation Clean Order 2014 plainly faltered. There was also unauthorized expenditure by 45 municipalities and entities of 2.23 billion, an increase of 1.66 billion over the previous year, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 130 million. The OR Tambo District Municipality has suffered similar fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Chairperson, Western Cape does not support this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was from the Western Cape. Any other province? KwaZulu-Natal?
Honorable Chairperson, House Chair, thank you. The KwaZulu-Natal Chairperson will vote in favor of the report because the report spells out what needs supposed to be done. We don't believe in grandstanding, Chair, like the Western Cape. We believe, Chair, that the measures that are put in place to support and capacitate the municipality are sufficient, Chairperson, and that in terms of the recommendations that are contained in the report, that the departments must demonstrate clearly their plans of support to municipalities. We further, Chair, are alive to the fact that this district municipality, despite the capacity, has delivered, and it does deliver services to the people. Whether monies are taken back, but they continued to offer support, and the evidence is there when you visit OR Tambo. Therefore, Chair, we declare that in our view as the KwaZulu-Natal, capacity to municipality is important, but also and that accountability should be prime in all our work that we do. And that in all of that, Chair, those are procedural and processes, Chair, but service delivery to the people must always be prioritized in the midst of any other technical glitches and issues that we might have. We will therefore declare in that order, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was a declaration from KZN. Can I check if ever we still have any other province? Thank you. Thank you very much. We shall now proceed to the voting on the question. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape fully supports, Chair.
Free State. Thank you, Gauteng.
Gauteng supports, Chairperson.
KwaZulu-Natal.
KwaZulu-Natal iyavuma, Chair.
Limpopo.
Limpopo siyavuma.
Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga iyaseka, Chair.
Northern Cape.
Chair, in Northern Cape iyavuma la.
Northwest.
Northwest agrees, Chair.
Western Cape.
Western Cape does not support, Chairperson.
All heads of delegation have voted, so the voting will now close. 8 number of provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. We proceed. Honorable De Beer. Okay, my apology. I have to call for the second order from the Secretariat table.
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Appropriation, joint study tour to Malaysia.
Thank you very much. The Honorable De Beer.
Honorable Deputy Minister, welcome. The Select Committee on Appropriations, having undertaken a joint study tour with the Portfolio Committee on Economic Development to Malaysia from 14 to 18 August 2017, wish to present the following report. Since independence in 1957, the Malaysian public sector has been the driving force of national development. Malaysia's budget is closely associated with the long and medium-term economic development plans of the country. The Malaysian budget is a reflection of the government's economic objectives and policies. The public sector has undertaken a series of reforms and transformation initiatives in order to meet the growing demands for greater accountability and transparency regarding the government's performance in its entirety, of which planning and budgeting processes have been at the core of these reforms. The Malaysian government has adopted the outcome-based budgeting process to overcome weaknesses of implementation, monitoring, and evaluation in past planning and budgeting systems. The OBB emphasizes the achievement of program results or outcomes rather than just efficiency in spending. The purpose of the tour was to learn from Malaysia as a country that has long followed and implemented long-term development planning to achieve certain objectives such as economic growth, employment, as well as reducing income inequality. Malaysia's budget is also closely associated with the long and medium-term economic development plans of the country. Considering the slow growth nature of the South African economy, with low growth prospects and limited budgetary capacity to spend, it is important that scarce public resources are directed towards the NDP goals and social welfare programs that will boost economic activity and preserve living standards. Parliament has an important role to play in terms of oversight over both policy and budget implementation. During the study tour, the delegation met with various stakeholders and made the following observations. The South African government rates favorably compared to the Malaysian government on the Open Budget Index rating. The relatively low score implies that the Malaysian government provides only limited information to its public. Malaysia has established an economic planning unit, the EPU, which is the principal government agency responsible for the preparation of development plans for the nation. The unit was established in 1961 as the Economic Secretariat of the Economic Committee under the Executive Council for the then Federation of Malaysia. Its objective was then to focus on development planning on major problems in plan execution and all forms of foreign aid. Presently, the EPU's main function is strategic planning, resource allocation, monitoring and evaluation, as well as stakeholder facilitation. The unit is situated within the Office of the Prime Minister, who is also responsible for the drafting and the tabling of the national budget. In Malaysia, the revenue raised in terms of state laws are capped by the state concerns, and the country does not have the system of equitably sharing of the national raised revenue like the South African system of the provincial equitable share and the local equitable share. In Malaysia, the projects in various spheres of government that are related to the country's long-term transformation policies are funded centrally from the Consolidated Fund. The approach seems similar to the South African funding of the integrated development planning projects in municipalities by sector departments in various spheres of government. The funding of the projects in various spheres is also similar to the South African system, where sector departments fund projects via indirect conditional grants in other spheres of government. In Malaysia, the development targets are not only set in economic terms, but also in socio-economic terms. In response to the country's slow-moving development progress, the Malaysian government in 2009 introduced a new development methodology that focused on the impact and results. This is known as the Big Fast Results program and is aimed at accelerating Malaysia's development progress. This approach is similar to our Operation Pakisa that was introduced in 2014 in order to unlock our country's economic potential in various sectors. Some of the lessons learned during the visit was that from the East Asian economic crisis, the Malaysians learned the importance of being resilient and competitive as an economy, as well as the need for a driven growth through science and technology, research and development, and human capital development in order to minimize the impact of the external sector on the Malaysian economy. In fact, subsequent measures put in place were able to minimize the impact of the 2008-2009 global financial crisis in Malaysia. The situation in Malaysia is unlike in the Parliament of South Africa, where there are portfolio committees, standing committees, joint standing committees, as well as select committees that are appointed on a permanent basis to focus on the areas of responsibility, such as finance, economic development, etc. Select committees in Malaysia are particularly appointed when members of parliament want to investigate something rather than merely debating on it, just like the appointment of an ad hoc committee in the South African parliament. The legislative process in Malaysia is similar to the South African model, except that the national budget related or money bills together with a budget speech are presented by the Prime Minister and not the Minister of Finance, as is the case in South Africa. Public participation in Malaysia takes place during the executive process, while in South Africa, public participation is done during both the executive and parliamentary processes. Malaysia has emerged as a model for other countries pursuing transformation. Providing information of their plan is one that works and offers valuable lessons for us to learn from. The committee will, with this reason, in the course of its oversight work, engage all relevant stakeholders and role players on the things observed and learned during the study tour as measures and systems of good practice. Chairperson, I table this report for consideration.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Okay, we proceed. We shall now proceed to the voting on question. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will vote. Eastern Cape?
Eastern Cape support, Chair.
Free State?
Siyamba nayo sihlalo.
Gauteng?
Gauteng accepts the report, Chair.
KZN?
KwaZulu-Natal siyavuma.
Limpopo?
Siyayichaza.
Mpumalanga?
Mpumalanga support, Chair.
Northern Cape?
Northern Cape Dumalan.
Northwest?
We accept, Chair.
Western Cape?
Western Cape support, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. All the heads of delegation have voted. 9 number of provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the third order of the day.
Consideration of annual report of Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence for the year ending 31st of March 2015.
Thank you very much. I shall now call on the Honorable J.P. Pakis.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, the report that I'm going to present is a report of 2015 financial year, and the content of the report is not irrelevant, more so if one is to adumbrate on the recommendations of the report. And so I will do exactly that, because we still have to go for a particular debate. Chairperson, I want to table this report with the recommendations stipulated on the report that the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence makes the following recommendations: that the Minister of SAA should prioritize capacitation of governance structures, specific attention to risk management unit, internal audit unit, and ICT. The Minister should address the unfull disclosure of classified information and unnecessary leakages. The department should liaise with relevant departments to implement tight security on borders due to emerging cyber threats. South Africa has to develop the national cyber security policy framework to ensure coordinated and integrated approach in dealing with this kind of threats. Intelligence Academy need to establish and sustain engagements with strategic partners like higher education, government, regulatory bodies, and foreign intelligence services. The rapid changes in technology requires the national communications to continuously improve and enhance its capacity and processes in order to face the new challenges. The Intelligence Services Oversight Act needs to be amended, and the committee is busy dealing with that in line with the General Intelligence Law Amendment Act. The Minister of Police has to ensure that there are adequate resources, satellite police stations to combat crime. The Minister of Police should address shortages of resources, especially technology that assist in this intelligence gathering to minimize human trafficking, drugs, and car hijacking. Inadequate vetting in the intelligence community regarding procedure and vetting of officials is of serious concern. Officials must first complete vetting processes. Economic intelligence needs to be built as an important critical unit of growth and future interventions. The term of office of the judge for intelligence should be extended to allow the enhancement of cooperation between the judge and the intelligence community. I hereby table this report. I believe you will agree with me when I say the content thereof is not irrelevant, it's still important in our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Pakis. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question, and the question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Thank you very much. We shall now proceed to voting on the question. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will vote. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape siyavuma Chair.
Free State.
Sihlalo sikhamba nayo.
Gauteng.
Gauteng eGrisha.
KwaZulu-Natal.
KwaZulu-Natal siyavuma.
Limpopo.
Limpopo yadumalana.
Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga iyavuma.
Northern Cape.
Northern Cape yavuma Chair.
Northwest.
We accept you.
Western Cape.
Western Cape agrees.
Thank you very much. 9 provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the 4th and 5th and 6th orders of the day.
Consideration of reports of Select Committee on Security and Justice, suspension from Office of Magistrate, Ms. V.T. Qiba, the Chief Magistrate at East London, tabled in terms of Section 13(4)(b) of the Magistrate Act of 1993, suspension from office of Mr. P.S. Hole, Regional Magistrate at Kimberley, suspension from office of Magistrate Ms. X.B. Stearman, an additional magistrate at East London, tabled in terms of Section 13(4)(b) of the Magistrate Act of 1993.
Thank you very much. I shall now call on the Honorable Mteto.
The Select Committee on Security and Justice, having considered the Magistrate Commission's report that dated the 13th September 2017 on the suspension of a magistrate, Ms. V.T. Qiba, the magistrate at East London, tabled by the Minister for Justice and Correctional Services in terms of Section 13, subsection 4B, the Magistrate Act 1993, Act number 90 of 1993, report as follows. The Magistrate Commission charged Ms. V.T. Qiba with two counts of misconduct. Charge 1, the magistrate is guilty of misconduct in terms of the Regulation 25I of the regulations for judicial officers in the lower court, number R 361 of 11 March 1994, read with Regulation 26, subsection 17 of the regulations and section 16 of the Act, in that on or about 23 March 2015 and at or near East London, she made a false or incorrect statement, knowing it to be false or incorrect with a view to obtain any privilege or advantage in relation to her official position or duty or to the prejudice of the administration of justice. Charge 2. The magistrate is guilty of misconduct in terms of Regulation 25I in that on or about 24 March 2015 and at or near East London, she submitted to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development a substance in transport claim for the travel and allowance expenses purportedly relating to an official trip to Pretoria on the 23rd of March 2015, well knowing that in true and in fact, the claim she submitted was false in that she traveled to Pretoria to further her personal interest. The Magistrate Commission at its meeting held on the 25th August 2017 considered the document as required by Regulation 26, subsection 22, read with Regulation 2619 of the regulations, and resolved to recommend to the Minister that the recommendation of the presiding officer be accepted and that Ms. Griba be suspended and removed from the office of the magistrate. The Magistrate Commission notes that Ms. Griba's conduct, of which she was found guilty, it's so serious that it justifies her removal from office. Her conduct displayed dishonesty which puts her integrity as a judicial offer in serious doubt and renders her unfit to hold the office of magistrate. The Minister for Justice and Correctional Services suspended Magistrate V.T. Griba from office on the 13th September 2017. The Select Committee on Security and Justice note the higher court application of Magistrate Griba to set aside the sections of her suspension as magistrate. However, we note further that the High Court application does not suspend the committee's legal obligation in terms of Section 13, subsection 4C of the Magistrate Act 1993 to pass a resolution for the suspension of Magistrate Griba. Committee recommendation to the NCOP for approval. The Select Committee on Security and Justice, having considered the disciplinary proceeding reports from the Magistrate Commission and the Minister's suspension and the removal of Ms. V.T. Griba from the Office of Magistrate, reports that it concurs with the suspension and recommends that the National Council of Provinces confirms Ms. V.T. Griba's suspension and removal from the Office of the Magistrate. I so moved.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mtetwa. That concludes the debate. I shall put the question in respect of the fourth order. Okay, thank you very much. You continue, yes.
Thank you. The Select Committee on Security and Justice considered the Magistrate Commission disciplinary hearing progress report on the provisional suspension of a magistrate, Mr. P.S. Hole, a regional magistrate at Kimberley, tabled by the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services in terms of the Magistrate Act 1993, Act 90 of 1993 report as follows. Mr. Hole was appointed to the office of the magistrate on 1st September 2009. On or about 2010, the regional court president laid a complaint of misconduct against him with the commission. On the 27th November 2011, the commission...
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chairperson. With due respect to Honorable Nyambose, Honorable Mteto, I'm sorry. Just a point of order. It is not the honor. He's referring to Mr. Hole. It is not Mr. Hole. It is Mr. Hole. He may be misleading. Just to correct him, I know him personally. The gentleman is referring to Hole Tata Hole.
Thank you very much for the correction,
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Makwebu. Continue, Honorable Mteto.
Thank you. Ms. Ole was appointed to the office of the magistracy on 1st September 2009. On or about 2010, the regional court president laid a complaint of misconduct against him with the commission. On the 27th November 2011, the commission formally charged him with 10 counts, 10 offenses of misconduct. The charges against Mr. Hole were based on transcripts of court records which contain various remarks, utterances, and discussion by Mr. Hole, which, inter alia, displayed an abuse of judicial power, contained discussions, remarks, and comments on matters pertaining the magistrate profession in a manner which brought the judicial into dispute, and which is detrimental to the image of the office of the magistrate, and which does not uphold and promote the good name, dignity, and esteem of the office of the magistrate and the administration of justice. Contain remarks causing the regional court president, Mr. K.M. Ngandala, to be ridiculed in public by using the court as the platform to do so. The misconduct inquiry against Mr. Hole commenced on the 15th of October 2012 and was finally concluded on the 7th June 2016. The presiding officer considered all the mitigation and aggravating factors and recommended that Mr. Hole be suspended and removed from office as contemplated in Section 13 of the Magistrate Act 1993. Having considered the documentation presented to the Magistrate Court Commissions as required by Regulation 2619, read with Regulation 26, Subsection 2 of the Regulation for Judicial Officers in the Lower Court, 1994, the Commission at its meeting held on 25 November 2016 resolved to recommend to the Minister that Mr. Hole be removed from office on the ground of misconduct in terms of Section 13, Subsection 4, AI of the Act. The Commission is of the view that Mr. Hole's conduct as set out in the charges of which he was found guilty is so serious that it justifies his removal from office. The Minister confirmed the suspension and the removal from office, as well as withholding of Mr. Hole's salary as recommended by the Magistrate Commission. Committee recommendation, Select Committee recommendation for the NCOP for approval. The Select Committee on Security and Justice, having considered the disciplinary proceeding report from the Magistrate Commission, the Minister's suspension and removal of Mr. Hole from the Office of Magistrate and recommendation to withhold Mr. P.S. Hole's remuneration, report that it concurs with suspension and recommend that the National Council of Provinces confirm Mr. P.S. Hole's suspension and removal from office and confirm that withholding of Mr. P.S. Hole's remunerations. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mteto. We applaud you for being able to, yes, we now move to that one.
The Select Committee on Security and Justice, having considered the Magistrate Commission's report dated 18 August 2017 on the suspension of a magistrate, Mr. X.B. Stearman, an additional magistrate at East London, tabled by the Minister for Justice and Correctional Services in terms of Section 13, Subsection 4B of the Magistrate Act 1993, Act number 90 of 1993, report as follows. Mr. Stearman was appointed to the office of the magistrate on the 5th May 2003. Ms. Stearman was charged with 18 counts of misconduct contained in 3 separate charge sheets dated 12 July 2013, 7 November 2013, and 3 December 2014. The Magistrate Commission's person to lead the evidence, PLE, at the misconduct hearing withdrew charges 2 contained in the first charge sheet. Ms. Stearman placed all the remaining charges in dispute. The presiding officer, with both parties in agreement, had the charges set out in the second and third charges sheet, dated 3 December 2013, renumbered for purposes of convenience and continuity. Misconduct charges. The misconduct charges against Ms. Stearman relate to various incidents which occurred during 2011 and 2014. Ms. Stearman would insult and belittle a number of clerks employed at the East London Magistrate Court. She would both at the office and in open court use offense language, being discourteous, disrespectful, raising her voice and shouting at not only clerks and their supervisors in the presence of other staff members, attorneys and members of the public, but also her peers, a senior magistrate, the chief magistrate and judicial head of office, and local attorneys. She would issue any published email to administrative staff using offensive language. Ms. Stearman refused to accept a notice of motion from the respondent attorneys, the sheriff of the magistrate court in East London, and the chief magistrate secretary. Ms. Stearman failed to adhere to a prayer as set out in the notice of motion. She published a document in which she discussed, remarked, and commented on matters pertaining to her profession in the media, which was detrimentally to the image of the office of the magistrate. The presiding officer on the 12th December 2016 delivered her judgment and found Ms. Stearman guilty on 17 counts of misconduct. On 16 and 17 January 2017, the presiding officer considered all the mitigating and aggravating factors. The presiding officer imposed a sanction and submitted her reason for recommending to the Magistrate Commission in terms of Regulation 26, subsection 17B of the Regulations for Judicial Officers in the lower court, 1994, that Ms. Stearman be removed from office as contemplated in Section 13, subsection 4AI of the Magistrate Act 1990 of 1993. The Minister for Justice and Correctional Services suspended Magistrate Stearman from office on the 18th August 2017. Recommendations. The Select Committee on Security and Justice, having considered the disciplinary proceeding report from the Magistrate Commission and the Minister's suspension and removal of Ms. X.B. Stearman from the office of the Magistrate, report that it concurs with the suspension and recommendations that the National Council of Provinces confirms Ms. X.B. Stearman's suspension and removal from the office of the Magistrate. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mtetwa. Those were difficult names, but you managed to read them. You can go and take your seat. Honorable Klimbi, take us through with the sixth order of the day before you vote. Honorable Klimbi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable members, this is the report of the Select Committee on Security and Justice International Arbitration Bill, Bill 10B of 2017. Chairperson, the National Assembly referred the International Arbitration Bill 10B of 2017 to the National Council of Provinces and subsequently to the Select Committee for concurrency on the 24th October 2017. The Select Committee inquired into the subject of the bill and invited the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to brief the Select Committee on purpose and content of the bill on the 1st of November 2017. Chairperson, in 1976, this is the background of the legislation. In 1976, South Africa signed the Convention on the Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Rewards, the New York Convention, without reservation. The New York Convention creates a uniform international framework that allows parties to international commercial arbitration agreements to enforce foreign arbitral awards. The convention is widely considered as being the foundational instrumental for international arbitration. The convention is ratified by 154 countries. This means that, in principle, an arbitration award can be enforced in any of these countries. At present, the Arbitration Act 42 of 1965 is applicable to both domestic and international arbitration, but...
My apology, Honorable Klimbi.
Thank you.
Are you reading the sixth order?
Come again?
Are you busy with the sixth order?
I think so. Yes.
So he is supposed to read the sixth order.
Which is the sixth order? What is it?
The one that deals with the Legal Practice Amendment Bill, is that one?
What? Legal up. Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for that. Yeah.
For the clarification, Honorable Klimbi, please take your seat. The Honorable Mtetwa read the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth order of the day. You did so? Okay, then we have to go for voting before we go to the seventh order of the day. Honorable Mtetwa, you did that. He is saying he's not done. Let's check. Let the table staff help us because he did. He's finished. Honorable Mtetwa, the last one was the one that deal with the issue of Stirman. So you finished then. Oh, okay. So now we're going straight to the voting. Honorable Chief Whip.
No, Chair, it's not necessarily a point of order, but I'm just raising that Honorable Klimbi was almost halfway to complete the statement that he was reading on the subject, on the Order 7. So I thought that it would be allowed just to conclude, and then we'll come and vote on all of them.
The procedure was that we need to do with the fourth order, the fifth one, the sixth one, and then we vote. Thereafter, we allow the secretary to go through, yes, to read the order of the day, and then we'll then call the Honorable Klimbi. Thank you very much. I understand you and it really makes sense, but there's nothing we can do. We have to follow the procedure. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question in respect of fourth order. The question is that the report be agreed to. I shall, in accordance with Rule 71, first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declarations or vote if they so wish. We shall now proceed to the voting on the question. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will vote. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape, iyavuma.
Free State.
No, Chair, I know the circumstance facing Honorable Pagisi, Chair. He indicated earlier he's not in a very good state of health. And I here stand as Chief Whip of the National Council of Provinces and from Free State. Otherwise, I would not be here. So Free State agrees with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Gauteng.
Gauteng agrees.
KwaZulu Natal.
KwaZulu Natal iyavumelana nayo.
Limpopo.
Limpopo yamkela.
Honorable Faber, I'll come to you. Let's finish voting. On Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga iyavuma, Chair.
Northern Cape.
Northern Cape agrees, Chair.
Northwest.
Bokoni Buphiri Mayadu Malana Mudula stood.
Western Cape.
Western Cape agrees, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. 9 provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Before we continue with the fifth order, Honorable Faber, you wanted to rise on a point of order?
Chairperson, I wanted to try and assist by saying that Honorable Source can become Chief Whip so that the Chairperson can sit there, vote, then re-swap again and come and sit and vote again. But otherwise it can only be 8 provinces, Chair.
Honorable Faber, please allow the House to continue. I shall now put the question in respect of the fifth order. The question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declarations of vote if they so wish. Okay, we shall now proceed to the voting on the question. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will vote. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape, iyavumelana sihlalo.
Free State.
Chair, the same situation. Free State agrees.
Gauteng.
Gauteng agrees.
KwaZulu Natal.
KwaZulu Natal, stem sum.
Limpopo.
On stem sum.
Danke, Northern Cape.
Mpumalanga iyaseka.
Northwest.
Northern Cape agrees, Chair.
Northern Cape, yes, thank you. Northwest.
Northwest agrees.
Western Cape.
Die Wes-Kaap stem ook saam, Voorsitter.
Danke. All heads of delegation have voted. 9 number of provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Faber, are you still on the same point of order?
Chairperson, I need to assist here. It can only be 8 provinces. I think my Honorable Chief Whip is trying to explain there because he's trying to run to the Free State position and back to Chief Whip. But it can only be 8 provinces. We also agree with it from the Western Cape side, but we can.
Honorable Faber, thank you very much for your concern. The Honorable Chief Whip is from the Eastern Cape and he tried to explain from Free State and I have agreed with the explanation. Honorable Lauskachan, you are not in the House? What is the point of order?
Chair, I must support Honorable Faber. I'm a little bit confused here. We vote as provinces, as provincial whips. The Chief Whip's appointment is the Chief Whip. of the NCOP. There was no notice given in this council that he's standing in as the head of the delegation for the Free State. Actually, the Chief Whip cannot stand in as the head of delegation. According to the rules, he's the Chief Whip. Therefore, he cannot represent the province as the head of delegation, except if it's been given to him. So then, if he's the head of the delegation of the Free State, he must sit in the position of the Free State. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will come back to that one. Let me notice the hand of Honorable Khai before you, Honorable Zwane. Honorable Zwane.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. There is no rule that says the Chief Whip cannot vote here. Even now, we're going to be dealing with Section 75, where every permanent delegate has a right to vote. He has been sent here by his province. He can therefore vote for his province, but he can also vote as an individual in terms of Section 75 and also Section 77.
Okay.
And there's no specific rule that Honorable Lapuskakni can refer to.
Thank you very much, Honorable Khai. Let's just clear the confusion and then we will come back with the ruling. Anyhow, the Honorable Pakis is here. Can we allow the House to continue, Honorable members? We will check on that one and come back. But the fact that the Chief Whip comes from Free State, that's the one that forced us to agree. But we'll come back on the ruling. You want to come in, Honorable Kaola, before? Okay. Over to you. Yeah. Oh, Honorable Kaola, before you say something, the Honorable Zwane wanted to speak on this. Honorable Zwane, my apology, Honorable Member.
No, thank you, Chairperson. I actually wanted to request the Honorable Member that is opposed to the voting of the Honorable Chief Whip to quote the section that he is not allowed to vote. My second issue is, now that Honorable Pakis is here, can we not rerun the vote if there is an issue?
We are about to vote on the 6th order of the day. We're not going back, Honorable Zwane. The Honorable Kaula.
No, thanks, Chair. On a similar matter, I asked a question last week, and the ruling or the explanation from the Chairperson of Council was that a delegate has to be authorized by the leader of the delegation of the province. So you cannot just stand here and explain issues. You need to have an authority. You have to be authorized by the leader of your delegation.
Thank you.
That is what the Chairperson of Council said.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kaola. I was here, I was in the House, and I really understand what the Chairperson of the Council was trying to explain, because the matter is not the same. The member from the Western Cape who was in the House was not from the same party with the one who was in the House. And also, before the Western Cape walk out of the House, they did make it very clear that they are not supporting the bill. That is why the Chairperson put it very clear that we're not going to allow the honorable members from the Western Cape to vote, because we knew the position. It's different, Honorable Member. Can the House allow me to continue with the House, the matter of the House? I shall now put on the question in respect of the 6th order. The question is that the report be agreed to in accordance with Rule 71. I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make the declaration of vote if they so wish. Thank you very much. We shall now proceed to the voting on the question. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will vote. Eastern Cape?
Eastern Cape supports, Chair.
Free State?
Gauteng?
Gauteng agrees.
KwaZulu-Natal?
KwaZulu-Natal yayisekela umbiko.
Limpopo?
Limpopo redumela.
Mpumalanga?
Mpumalanga supports, Chair.
Northern Cape?
Northern Cape agrees, Chair.
Northwest?
Northwest supports.
Western Cape.
Western Cape support, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. All heads of delegation have voted. So 9 number of provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. Order, honorable members. The secretary will read the 6th order of the day. The 7th.
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Security and Justice, revised draft rules 2016 submitted to Parliament on 10 February 2016, rules of procedure for application to court in terms of the Promotion of Access to Information Act 2000, Act number 2 of 2000.
Thank you very much. I shall now call on the Honorable Quimby. Honorable Quimby on the list. They changed it. They did not inform me. Okay, according to the speaker's list that the table staff is having is Honorable Mtetwa, but mine is Honorable Quimby. Anyhow, there's no problem, Honorable Mtetwa.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development informed the Select Committee that the purpose of the PAIA amendment was to bring about uniformity to the court rules, as well as to accommodate necessary amendment stemming from the Brahma Constitutional Court judgment. Mr. Brahma, a journalist, sought access to certain information held by the Department of Social Development under the provisions of the PAIA. Committee consideration and reporting. The revised draft rules 2016 was submitted to the Parliament on the 10th February 2016. The Select Committee on Security and Justice considered the matter on the 21st September 2016, and after approving the revised draft rules, published the reports in the ATC on the 21st September 2016. Section 32, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1996, guarantees everyone the right of access to any information held by the state, any information that is held by another person, and that is required for the exercise or protection of any rights. Section 32, subsection 2 of the Constitution requires that national legislation be enacted to give effect to the right under the subsection 1A and B. The Promotion of Access to Information Act 2000, Act number 2 of 2000, PAIA, has ultimately been enacted to give effect to the rights under subsection 1A and B. The Rules Board for Courts of Law Rules Board is authorized in terms of section 79, subsection 1 of PAIA to make rules of procedure, subject to approval by the Minister. A court in respect of applications in terms of section 78, a court to receive representation, expert referred to in section 80, subsection 3A of PAIA. The section 79, subsection 3 of PAIA provides that any rule made under section 79, subsection 1 must, before publication in the Gazette, be approved by Parliament. PAIA Rules Committee, PRC of the Rules Board, in fulfilling its mandate of reviewing the rules of courts on an ongoing basis, identifies certain shortcomings in relation to some of the rules so promulgated. These shortcomings, together with some considered judicial pronouncement, such as the Brahma case, resulted in the Rules Board resolving to embark on a historic revision of the entire rules. These revised PAIA rules were subsequently approved by the Rules Board at its meeting held on the 20 March 2015. The principle underlying the revised PAIA rules is that the rules formulated in terms of Section 79, subsection 1 of the PAIA should make provision for the existing procedure of a High Court Rule 6 and Magistrate Court Rule 55 to govern applications for access to information in terms of PAIA. In addition, the applicant now has a period of 180 days to bring the relevant application to court for appropriate relief in relations to an event contemplated in Section 78, subsection 2 and 3 of PAIA, and the court can condone non-compliance with a stipulated period where the interest of justice so require. Furthermore, expert application must be made under oath or affirmation of the truth thereof, and must be supported by documentary proof where applicable. Recommendations. The Select Committee, in consideration the matter, had no objections to improve the PAIA legislation, and the Select Committee on Security and Justice, having considered the subject of the revised draft rules 2016 submitted to Parliament on the 10th February 2016, Rules of Procedure for Application to Court in terms of the Promotion of Access to Information Act 2000, Act number 2 of 2000, refer to it. Report that it has agreed to revised draft rules without proposing further amendment. I so moved.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mtetwa. That concludes the debate. I shall now put on the question, and the question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Thank you very much. We shall now proceed to the voting on the question. I shall do this in alphabetical order per province. Heads of delegation will now vote. Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape support, Chair.
Free State. Gauteng.
Gauteng agrees.
KwaZulu-Natal.
KwaZulu-Natal, yavumsla.
Limpopo.
Limpopo, dumela modulasetulo.
Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga support.
Northern Cape.
Northern Cape support, Chair.
Northwest.
Agreed, Chair.
Western Cape.
Western Cape support, Chair.
Thank you very much. They want you to repeat. What did you say?
I said the Western Cape supports, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Branch. All heads of delegation have voted. 9 number of provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the 8th order of the day.
Consideration of Legal Practice Amendment Bill, B11B 2017, and report of Select Committee on Security and Justice thereon.
Thank you. I shall now call on the Honorable Klimbi, and this is a Section 75 bill.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable members. Chair, the National Assembly referred the Legal Practice Amendment Bill, B11B of 2017, to the National Council of Provinces and subsequently to the Select Committee for concurrency on the 14th of November 2017. The Select Committee requested an informal briefing from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development on the subject of the bill, invited the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to brief the Select Committee on the purpose and content of the Legal Practice Amendment Bill, Bill 11 of 2017, on the 8th of November 2017. The Select Committee further instructed the department to brief the committee on the amendments made by the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services and the concerns raised by the public by the public during the Portfolio Committee's public participation process and how this was addressed by the Portfolio Committee. In 2014, this is the background, the Legal Practice Act was promulgated to curtail some of the challenges within the legal profession and more specifically to advance transformation within the legal profession. The Legal Practice Act also made provision for a transitional body, namely the National Forum, which would serve as an interim body for 3 years until the establishment of the South African Legal Practice Council. In February 2018, the 3 years as set out in the Act will come to an end. Hence, the Legal Practice Amendment Bill, which will ensure the transition from the National Forum to the Legal Practice Council. During the time, the Transitional National Forum was responsible for developing election procedures for constituting the South African Legal Practice Council. The Transitional National Forum comprises of 16 legal practitioners, 8 attorneys from the Law Society of South Africa, 5 advocates from the General Council of Bar of South Africa, and 1 representative from National Bar Council of South Africa, National Forum of Advocates and Advocates for Transformation. The forum was required within 24 months to make recommendations, among others, for the establishment of the Provincial Council and their areas of jurisdiction, composition, functions, and manner of their elections. The forum was further required to set all the practical vocational training requirements that candidate attorneys must comply with before they can be admitted by the court as legal practitioners and prepare and publish a code of conduct for legal practitioners, candidate legal practitioners, and juristic entities. Therefore, the Legal Practice Amendment Bill seeks to achieve the following, Chairperson. The bill seeks to amend the Act to address practical and technical issues, including the transitional provisions of the Act. The bill seeks to establish insurance schemes, medical aid scheme, medical benefit scheme, pension funds, provident funds, pension schemes, or benevolent schemes for legal practitioners, for employees of legal practitioners, and for the officials and employees of the council. The bill seeks to further regulate the prescription of the areas of jurisdiction of the provincial councils and to provide that only practicing legal practitioners may perform certain acts or render certain services. The bill further regulates the duties of banks to finish the council or the board with the signed transaction history in respect of the trust account for the period determined by the council or the board, as the case may be. The bill provides for the duration of the National Forum and provides for the National Forum to make rules and the minister to regulate regulations on the recommendation of and in consultation with the National Forum. The bill also seeks to clarify the matter of the transfer of the assets, rights, liabilities, obligations, and staff of the statutory law societies to the Council of Provincial Council, as well to provide the dissolution dated of the law societies. Due to the fact that National Forum did not complete all the work it was meant to complete in the period it was afforded, an amendment was made during the PC on justice deliberations, which afforded the National Forum until 31st of October 2018 to complete its work, and upon which date the forum will cease to exist. Chairperson, the Select Committee, in keeping with the principle of facilitating public involvement in the legislative processes of the NCOP, agreed to facilitate public participation by advertising the bill on the parliamentary website and other parliamentary social media platforms and stakeholder platforms between the 15th and the 20th of November 2017. The Select Committee received 2 submissions, one from the National Bar Council of South Africa and the second one from Clear Law of South Africa. However, the submission received by the 2 correspondents were similar to the submission received by the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services. Further, some of the amendments fell outside the scope of the current bill, and some had been addressed by the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services amendments. Then the Legal Practice Bill was adopted by committee without amendments on the 22nd of November 2017 and published in the announcements, tabling and reports on the 22nd November 2017. Chairperson, the Select Committee considered the subject of the Legal Practice Amendment Bill, Bill 11B of 2017, which is National Assembly, Section 75, referred to it and reports that it has agreed to the bill without proposed amendments. The Select Committee on Security and Justice recommends that the Council approve the bill. I so move, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Klimbi. We really appreciate the work of the Select Committee. Unfortunately, we have to defer the bill because we don't have a quorum in the House. Unfortunately, I have to check if ever there are political parties that want to make some declarations. Okay, thank you very much. We proceed. I shall request the Secretary to read the 9th order of the day.
Consideration of International Arbitration Bill B10B 2017 and report of Select Committee on Security and Justice thereon.
Thank you very much, Honorable Klimbi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for the opportunity. Honorable members, the National Assembly referred the International Arbitration Bill, Bill 10B of 2017, to the National Council of Provinces, subsequently to the Select Committee for concurrency on the 24th of October 2017. The Select Committee inquired into the subject of the bill and invited the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to brief the Select Committee on the purpose and content of the bill on the 1st of November 2017. Chairperson, the background to the legislation: in 1976, South Africa signed the Convention on the Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Rewards, that is New York Convention, without reservation. The New York Convention creates a uniform international framework that allows parties to international commercial arbitration agreements to enforce foreign arbitral awards. The convention is widely considered as being the foundational instrument for the international arbitration. The convention is ratified by 154 countries. This means that, in principle, an arbitration award can be enforced in any of these countries. At present, the Arbitration Act 42 of 1965 is applicable to both domestic and international arbitration, but it's outdated. The International Arbitration Bill was developed to meet the specific requirements of international arbitration, while the Arbitration Act will apply only to domestic arbitration. Post-1994, it was clear that many of the laws relevant to the field of international trade and investment were redundant and ineffective. In July 1999, the SALRC published its report on international arbitration, proposing that the United Nations Commission on International Treaty Law, model law, be adopted for use in international commercial arbitration in South Africa. Chairperson, the United Nations Commission on International Trade model law serves as a guidance tool for states forming and modernizing their arbitral laws. In this way, the country would align itself with international best practice. The Commission also recommended that the model law be adopted with the minimum of changes to promote the harmonization and uniformity of national laws relating to international arbitration procedures, and to make our law in international arbitration more user-friendly and attractive to foreign parties and their lawyers. However, legislative reform was not forthcoming at this stage. Chairperson, the importance of this bill, international arbitration has grown exponentially in the course of last decade as a means of resolving disputes arising in the course of international trade. In Africa, foreign direct investment has grown by 85.3% between 1994 and 2013. Asia, African economies have increasingly embraced international arbitration as an accessible and preferred means to resolve disputes. However, many African counterparties, typical state-owned entities, wish to avoid the traditional, which is European arbitral institutions, and instead are opting for an ad hoc route, including domestic African arbitration centers or regional options. The majority of arbitration involving an African party still take place outside of the continent. The 5 most widely used seats are London, Paris, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Geneva. The primary fact during the select of the seat is the reputation and recognition. However, there are concerted efforts to create the requisite infrastructure for international arbitration to take hold in Africa. From a structural standpoint, this includes not only establishing the necessary model arbitration legislative framework, but the emergence of new arbitration centers in different jurisdictions, that's it. That's why this passing of this bill is important to South Africa, Chairperson. Therefore, the aim of the bill is to improve access to justice services and to ensure the realization of national development plans targets of expanding trade and investment and positioning South Africa on the world's international arbitration stage. The International Arbitration Act will align South Africa in international arbitration law with international best practice and should go a long way to establish South Africa as a venue of choice for international arbitration. Chairperson, the Select Committee In keeping this principle of facilitating public involvement in the legislative process of the NCOP, agreed to facilitate public participation by advertising the bill on radio media, on the parliamentary website, and other parliamentary social media platforms and stakeholder platforms between the 1st of November and the 10th of November 2017. Therefore, Chairperson, the Select Committee consider the subject of the International Arbitration Bill 10B of 2017, which National Assembly Section 71 referred to it and reports that it has agreed to the bill without proposed amendments. The Select Committee Chairperson on Security and Justice recommends that the Council approve the bill without amendments. I so move, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Klimbi. We will continue to appreciate the work of the committee. Anyhow, I was supposed to put on the question. I am failing to do that because we don't have a quorum in the House. So we will defer the bill. Anyhow, I must first allow political parties to make their declarations if they so wish. Okay, thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to welcome our Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister Mkonki, you're welcome in the House. And then we continue with the debate on the increase in card fraud that continue to rob South Africans on their hard-earned income, resulting in losses over 600 million rands a year. However, I must first address Honorable Magwebu that I can only allow you to correct the surnames and the names, but pronunciation, I won't allow you. It's not our mother tongue. Thank you. Honorable CJ De Beer, you are the first one on the speakers list.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Members, South Africans have lost almost 4.5 billion rands to credit and debit card fraud since 2010, according to the South African Banking Risk Information Center. In 2016, credit card and debit card fraud in South Africa amounted to over 600 million rand. It's actually 717.9 million rand. 1 in 3 South Africans have experienced card fraud in the past year. Card payments constituted 61% of all payment transactions processed in South Africa during 2016, with over 60 million debit cards and nearly 8 million credit cards in circulation. A report by the South African Banking Risk Information Center shows that credit card fraud increased by 13% from 331.4 million rand in 2015 to 374.4 million rands in 2016. Debit card fraud increased by 3.1% from 333.2 million rands to 343.5 million rands. 52% of debit card fraud occurred at ATMs, in contrast to the 3% for credit cards. Card not presented, they call it CNP fraud, on credit cards has increased by 18.9% from 2015 to 2016 and account for 46.8% of the losses. Despite the high levels of fraud, a large portion of South Africans, that is 45%, indicate that they are happy with the way their banks are dealing with these crimes, with only 16 and 14% stating that they were somewhat unhappy or very unhappy. If we look at the geographical distribution of credit card fraud, provinces affected the most are Gauteng and Western Cape. Along with KZN, these provinces had 85.9% of all credit card fraud losses in South Africa. Gauteng accounts for 57.2% of credit card gross fraud losses, followed by Western Cape 16.1% and KZN 12.7%. All provinces showed an increase during the 2016 year, with the exception of Western Cape. The biggest increases when comparing 2015 and 2016 occurred in the Eastern Cape, up by 148%, Northwest 127.9%, Northern Cape 95.7%, and Free State 89.9%. Any increase, Chair, in card fraud is of great concern to the industry, as well as the ever-evolving sophistication of the tactics used by criminals. Criminals will always be on the lookout for gaps and weaknesses in order to defraud victims, especially our older and our vulnerable people. The banking industry's figures show that 48% of all credit card fraud and 79.7% of debit card fraud losses occurred in South Africa. Cards fraudulently obtained by criminals were used to conduct cash withdrawals at ATMs inside South Africa. If we look at the debit card gross fraud losses, lost or stolen debit card fraud losses increased by 39.9% in 2016 and accounts for 79.7% of the total debit card gross fraud losses in the country. In an attempt to overcome changes in business processes linked to the chip, PIN cards, criminals proceed with modus operandi such as shoulder surfing, card jamming or card swapping and card theft. Lost and or stolen card gross fraud losses are currently at the highest level ever reported. Gauteng, Western Cape and KZN accounted for 67.9% of all debit card losses in South Africa. Increases in debit card fraud between 2010 and 2016. If we look at the provinces, Eastern Cape up from 15.2 million rands to 21.7 million rands. Free State up from 4.1 million rands to 9.6 million rands. Gauteng from 58.9 million to 101.5 million. KZN from 23.8 million up to 44.8 million. Limpopo from 3.9 million to 13.4 million. Mpumalanga from 5.7 up to 15.8 million. Northern Cape, that's my province, from about 1 million up to 3.1 million. Northwest from 4.1 million to 16.6 million. And Western Cape up from 9.6 million to 23.5 million. An overview of ATM transactions, that's cash withdrawals, pertaining to credit card fraud in 2016 shows that 3% of the gross fraud losses on all South African issued credit cards that were reported as cash withdrawals at ATMs in the country. An exceptionally high percentage of the losses related to account takeovers and false applications. Again, this majority of transactions occurred in Gauteng, followed by KZN and Western Cape. If we look at counterfeit credit card fraud accounted to 26.4% of the gross fraud losses on credit cards. The majority of losses associated with counterfeit credit card transactions occurred within South Africa. The highest gross fraud losses in respect of counter credit card fraud related to purchases at grocery stores, cash withdrawals at ATMs, purchases at department stores, liquor stores, and service stations. Although counterfeit credit card fraud is no longer the greatest fraud loss category, it remains a concern as it still accounts for a large portion of fraud losses. Criminals are currently abusing the fallback option, resulting in an increase in the number of transactions occurring in South Africa. This is particularly noteworthy in transactions related to credit cards. South African issued credit cards are frequently used by criminals in Africa, on the continent such as Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Lesotho. Most of these transactions are fraudulent cash withdrawals at ATMs. Fraudulent transactions have also been reported in Mauritius lately. This emerging trend could relate to the increase in merchants registering their businesses in other countries in order to circumvent rules applicable to South Africa. 5 cross-border countries with the highest recorded financial losses due to CNP and counterfeit fraud during 2016 were the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Netherlands, and China. According to the Financial Fraud Action United Kingdom, gross fraud losses in the UK cards, debit and credit cards increased by 18% from January to December 2015 compared to the same period in 2014. South Africa mirrors the UK trend with increases in card not presented cases and lost or stolen card fraud. It's also crucial that we look at risky behavior. Consumers in Europe, Middle East, and Africa are taught to ignore emails and calls requesting details about their bank accounts, although consumers in the United Arab Emirates and South Africa respond to scammers more frequently. South Africa consumers were also the biggest offenders when it came to other risky behavior. 28% of respondents indicated that they did not lock their phone when they were not using it. 26% of respondents said they have thrown papers or documents with account numbers, for example, bank statements, in the trash bin. 18% said they had used online banking or internet shopping without security software or in a public computer, or on a public computer. 5% responded to calls or emails asking for banking details. Now, this is the things that we have to address and sensitize our people when we are in our constituency to be aware of. The Payment Association of South Africa referred to two developments in South Africa. The first one was a project to facilitate the world's first truly interoperable biometric verification and is now recognized as a third type of customer verification method after signature and a PIN. Secondly is the increased adoption of contactless technology during 2016. While traditional fraud trends to continue to be monitored and addressed, a number of technology developments have introduced a new, non-traditional risk that need fresh approach to fraud management. Efforts to rescue the card payment system continue to receive priority attention. The number one priority is to ensure that the South African payment system remains safe, secure, and relevant. In order to protect themselves against potential fraudulent attacks, financial institutions need to find ways of implementing effective anti-fraud strategies. There are 5 main challenges facing financial institutions in the fight against card fraud. Firstly, accurate defining the payment fraud. Secondly, fraud departments that work in silos. Current techniques do not detect fraud quick enough. Too often fraud is considered a competitive issue, and optimize working practices in financial institutions. Financial institutions, chairperson, around the world need to review its anti-fraud strategies and techniques. The goal of any anti-fraud strategy should be a real-time detection and prevention system spanning all channels. It demands security measures that allow banks to detect and prevent fraud when it happens across the globe. The creation of a public awareness of various bank-related crimes and educating the people on how to protect themselves, Chair, must be our key focus area. We look forward to the inputs by members in this debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable De Beer. The Honourable Tablanche.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, South Africans are robbed of over 600 million a year of their hard-earned income due to credit and debit card fraud, and it is still steadily on the increase. Despite the aforementioned fact, it is hard to imagine a life in our modern world without the convenience of these little plastic wonders called credit and debit cards for a large percentage of our citizens. They, the middle class and their more affluent brethren and sisters, carry a range of these cards in their wallets, ensuring them the chosen lifestyles in the fast lane. These people are the prime targets of the major banks and institutions offering them even more cards on a daily basis. This group earns enough money to make it possible to serve the monthly minimum installments required. Credit cards are issued by banks and other financial institutions to individual customers, offering a predetermined credit line based on their personal circumstances. It will allow the customers to borrow and spend up to an agreed limit. Interest is then charged on credit balances until the balance is cleared. This financial wonder has unfortunately also attracted the attention of criminal elements in their fraudulent activities. Credit card fraud takes place when criminals steal credit cards by whatever means to source the victim's funds illegally. These victims of identity and card fraud often suffer substantial financial losses. It may even result in blacklisting and a struggle to regain their good financial reputation. Chairperson, the extent of these criminal activities is severe. On the 25th of April 2017, the latest data from the South African Banking Risk Information Center, SABRIC, shows that South Africans have lost almost 4.5 billion rand to credit and debit card fraud since 2010, and that during 2016 alone, gross losses due to credit card fraud increased by 13%. SABRIC CEO Lani Pillay explains that while any increase is of concern to the industry, the ever-evolving sophistication of tactics used by criminals is also of great concern. It is clear that this situation is spinning out of control and has severe implications for both the individual and the economy. Individuals can and must do everything in their power to protect themselves against this crime, such as guard online information, clear logins and passwords, be alert, monitor bank and credit card statements, verify mailing addresses, monitoring credit reports, shred sensitive information, consider identity theft protection, and pick the right service providers, fraud alert, and credit freezes. Carl Westwick, the CEO from Retail Capital, stated the following on the 25th of May 2017. Regulations protecting South Africans against credit card fraud are amongst the strictest in the world. Generally, most payment online done through a legitimate company are safe and PCI DSS compliant. Despite the aforesaid quote, South African criminals still find ways to get their hands on other people's money. The South African government also introduced legislation like FICA and NCA to curb the crime wave, and the Banking Association South Africa issued the following tips to avoid becoming a victim of crime fraud. Never let the card out of your sight making payments. Report on any suspicious behavior. Never accept help from anyone at an ATM. Be familiar with the ATM construction to notice foreign objects. Never use an ATM that is tampered with. Report suspicious objects or people loitering around ATMs. South Africans may come to the conclusion that we have made great strides to combat this crime and may also wonder why then is this crime stubbornly on the increase. This is indeed the case until you check the performance on the criminal justice side. This crime does not receive any special attention by the police. In their latest crime statistics report, it is dealt with under the wider definition of commercial crime. However, mention is made that these crimes threaten the well-being of the economy, and how is it on the increase in even the smallest of towns throughout the country? The net result of this approach is why we don't have any visibility as far as this crime is concerned. It disappears amongst the general case docket overload of detectives and does not get the attention it deserves. The only solution to turn this tide is to reinstate a specialized unit that is properly trained, equipped, and managed. Chairperson, it is high time that the Ministers of Police and Finance be directed to take appropriate action to ensure that credit card frauds get the attention it deserves. Parliamentary oversight is also necessary on a regular basis, and it will certainly contribute immensely to curb this crime. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Blanche. I shall now call on the Honorable Bim Konki, Deputy Minister for Police.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Honorable members and special delegates, fellow colleagues, comrades and friends, I'm highly inspired that as a house located at the cutting edge of cooperative governance, this house, the NCOP, is rising into the occasion on fundamental challenges facing our people on the ground, united in their diversity. This topic represents one of the critical security challenges that are affecting all our people globally and domestically, and cannot be isolated from the other financially related crimes like the illicit financial flows. In his State of the Nation address of 1995, the late President Mandela had this to say, I quote, "This situation cannot be tolerated, in which our country continues to be engulfed by the crime wave, which includes murder, crimes against women and children, drug trafficking, armed robbery, fraud, and theft. We must take the war to the criminals and no longer allow the situation in which we are mere sitting ducks of those in our society who, for whatever reasons, are hell-bent to engage in criminal and antisocial activities," close the quotes. This is a call to war against crime and criminality in our society in all its manifestations. South Africa cannot win the war against crime as long as we continue with the myth that fighting crime is the sole responsibility of the state. This should involve broad mobilization and partnership across society. This is particularly so in the light of reported increase of collusions and cartels, including organized crime. We must, together with all our people, declare our malls, streets, shopping centers, and places of leisure crime-free. We must take the war into the doorstep of criminals. Since the 1st of April 2017, we have taken this war to the ugly face of criminals in South Africa. We do this committed to serve and protect our people from the terror unleashed by criminals against our communities. South Africans have lost almost 744.4 million to credit and debit card fraud since January this year to September. The latest fraud data from the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations and their stakeholders show this is in the increase. Combined increase of 4% from 716.7 million compared to January-September 2016. Organized crime groups are increasingly involved in fraud. Financial market diversification, greater levels of economic activity, and technology developments have created more and more opportunities for fraud. Card fraud is the fraudulent acquisition and or use of debit and credit cards or card details for financial gain. So the following methods of card fraud have been identified in South Africa. Acquiring legitimate cards from financial institutions by using false supporting documents. Stealing legitimate credit and debit cards. Creation, promoting it. He intends only his own gain, and he is in this, as in many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end which was not part of his intentions. Nor is it always the worst of the society that it was not part of it. By pursuing his own interests, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectually than when he really intends to promote it. I close the quotes. This is a challenge we are facing in South Africa of crass materialism, conspicuous consumption, and conspicuous greed. The question of card fraud that is haunting our people daily is not different from bank collusions, construction company collusion, steel company cartels, and bread company gangsterism. We need to attack card fraud in our country with the same vigor and enthusiasm in our war against both commercial and economic crimes in the Republic of South Africa. This requires sophisticated capacity and capabilities on the side of the state to counter and curb these predatory forms of crime. The illegal movements of money or capital from one country to another, when these funds are illegally earned, transferred, or utilized, is a cause for concern. The Intelligence Center reports suspicious transactions to various institutions and referrals to the South African Police Service are referred by crime intelligence and to the PCMC, either the national office or directly to the provincial offices. So the Hawks is busy dealing with this particular issue. The South African Reserve Bank also reports cases directly to the Serious Commercial Crime Unit in the jurisdiction of the offense. The majority of cases reported are contravention of the exchange control regulations and the card fraud. For an example, Mr. Ming Qiu Cheng from China, he opened 13 accounts, opened at FNB and Capitec. The bank cards and PIN numbers were given to Cheng. Money to the amount of 1 million were deposited and withdrawn in China. The amount may increase as investigation continues. The suspect is a Chinese national. The warrant of arrest has been issued. So this is an international problem, and it must be dealt with in that way. The second example, the complainant alleged that one of the employees of the company ordered stock goods using the company's name. The complainant alleges that he never authorized this ordering of stock or goods, nor did the employee seek authority to order the stock or the goods. The stock or the goods ordered by the employee were from outside the borders of the Republic of South Africa, and false documents were submitted to Investec Bank Limited. So the complainant further alleges that the employee knows the company procedures and therefore contravened the exchange control regulations to the value of 40,717,000. Another example is a company called Optera Logistics effected various payments to foreign beneficiaries under the categories of freight imported. There are no records that Opera Logistics were made payments for imports at the authorized dealers prior to effecting such payment for freight imports. The value of this is 546 million. This is a crisis and problem that is facing the country. We are calling on all our people to be vigilant, especially during the festive season. We must make all our malls free of crime. People must not ask assistance from these good-looking young boys who are wearing nice shoes and nice suits from Italy, who have arrogated into themselves the responsibility of waking up and go and help people at ATMs. They are not employed to do the job. We have security guards, we have police officers. Ask assistance from the police, not from good-looking criminals. We are also calling on all those who are doing illicit financial flows to desist from that. Because the money that we use to build schools, to fund higher education, and fund the health of our people is taken by business criminals that are taking money from South Africa into a foreign land and not benefit the people of the Republic of South Africa. They don't want to pay tax and they don't want to invest in the country because they want the government of the African National Congress to fail. We are not going to fail. We are going to work with those partners who are committed primarily to the Republic of South Africa before any other foreign land. With those words, we are calling on all our people to be vigilant during the festive season. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. I shall now call on the Honorable Vaudo.
Allow me first and foremost to acknowledge the presence of our supreme forces, irrespective of whatever our perceptions might be. I greet all of you with Assalamu alaikum. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, in an increasingly financialized and digitalized economy, the use of electronic banking and card services, together with the use of information technology, this is increasing all the time, not only in the banking industry, but in industry in general in this country. And of course, this is a welcome phenomenon. This creates opportunities for job creation, for poverty alleviation, and this is something that we do very much welcome indeed. But the truth is, together with these opportunities also go the opportunities for increased crime. Since 2010 alone, over 4.5 billion rand has been stolen through credit card fraud. This is a serious issue, and it is growing all the time. It is robbing innocent, hard-working South Africans of the money that people so desperately need to put food on the table. But, Honorable Chair, this is also impacting on our tourism industry. Visitors that come into South Africa, irrespective of whether they come here as business people, as holiday makers, or even coming here for health or other reasons, people are increasingly becoming victims of this type of crime and crime in general. It is estimated that every year some 600 million rand is stolen, and this figure is increasing. Financial and cybersecurity have unfortunately not kept up with the skill and sophistication with which criminals are able to steal card information. This makes it imperative for the government to put money and resources into technology and skills which can be used to fight credit card fraud. This has been done to an extent, but needs to be dramatically improved. While technology and the digitalization of money are important in tackling credit card fraud, what must also be done is to improve the understanding of people around how credit cards work and what information they can and cannot share or make public. As people are often conned into sharing their credit card information with criminals or are simply not aware of what they can and cannot share with others. Keeping credit card information to oneself is vital to defeating credit card fraud, as over 66% of credit card fraud in this country occurs through card not present fraud, which simply means where there is neither the card holder nor the card present during the fraudulent transaction. That is why we reiterate the warning issued by the South African Banking Risk Information Center that banking crimes and credit card fraud could be very prevalent over the festive season, and that all South Africans should be alert to this. We also are aware of the view that banks and government should put more effort into educating credit card holders on how to best to prevent credit card fraud, and also on what to do when they are victims of credit card fraud, as many people report these crimes only when it is too late for anything to be done. Honorable Chairperson, the systems used at ATMs, or rather the lack of security systems within this ATM system for the withdrawals of funds, is totally inadequate. There should be greater security built in at the point of withdrawal. greater responsibility should be taken by banks to ensure that fraud does not take place in the first instance. Banks have a greater role to play here and are abrogating their responsibility in this regard. And with regard to cybercrime, which is leading to fraudulent bank transfers, here again, it is the bank that should be playing a greater role to ensure that this does not take place in the first instance. But like all crime in South Africa, credit card fraud stems from the systemic inequality, poverty, and unemployment that defines our society. And as long as a privileged few have control of the economy and land, people in South Africa will continue to look for means and ways to put food on the table. Therefore, the only long-term solution to ending the mass credit card fraud this country experiences is changing the ownership patterns by expropriating land that is unused and underutilized, nationalizing the commanding sectors of the economy, state-led industrialization, and the provision of free quality education for all. Honorable Deputy Minister, the vigor and passion with which you advocate for the fight against crime, your government would do a lot better to expand that kind of energy into redressing the socio-economic discrepancies in this country. All other solutions will fail as they do not go to the root of the problem. And as the EFF, we believe that this is how not only credit card fraud, but crime in general can be ended. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
The Honorable Nakedi.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, Chairperson, card fraud is indeed expensive for companies, for the South African economy, and for individual consumers. It is thus no surprise that this crime is reported to be costing South Africa hundreds of millions of rands every year. What is most disturbing is that this fraud occurs in spite of existence of such stringent laws and regulations such as the Financial Intelligence Center Act, FICA, the National Credit Act, NCA, and the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS. The FICA was introduced to fight financial crime and movement of monies derived from unlawful activities. The NCA prohibits issuance of credit cards to, and thus their use by people who do not qualify for them. The PCI DSS, on the other hand, requires that if you are going to store credit card information, you cannot put it somewhere where it is going to be easily accessible. The card should at all times have password protection and other encryptions. The PCI DSS relates specifically to debit and credit cards and the protection of names, card numbers, passwords, and personal identification numbers. It provides both a measure of compliance and of security to anyone dealing with credit cards through 12 compliance requirements, which include protecting stored cardholder data and having secure systems and applications. The PCI DSS are updated at all times as new methods of bypassing security are discovered. For example, card providers have introduced chip cards and authentication using pins in recent years after the older magnetic stripe technology was found not to be secure enough. Now banks in line with this are using a two-factor authentication where you have to put in a one-time PIN separately. With chip and PIN cards, the credit card's data is stored on a tiny computer chip, not a magnetic stripe, and customers punch in a digit PIN, normally a 4-digit PIN, instead of signing the screen. The chip reduces fraud because it contains a cryptographic key that authenticates the card as a legitimate bank card and also generates one-time codes with each transaction. This means that thieves can simply take account numbers stolen in a breach and emboss them onto the magnetic stripe of a random card or program them onto a chip of a random chip card to make fraudulent purchases at stores or make unauthorized withdrawals at ATMs. There are also new authentications processes like voice, fingerprints, iris recognition that have been introduced, though these are not yet widely used in South Africa. These measures are applauded, and we want to implore the stakeholders, especially the banks, to keep on updating these security standards. However, as a SAPRIC report stated, the credit card fraud still persists. As the new technologies revolutionize the way we socialize and do business, unfortunately, fraudsters also come up with new technologies to steal our monies, including from the poor. As earlier indicated by the Deputy Minister and other speakers, criminals use methods such as card skimming and counterfeit card fraud, which still remain a big problem in South Africa. Here, criminals use increasingly sophisticated technologies to catch unsuspecting victims. Some of the devices that criminals use is ATM-mounted card skimming devices, which work similarly to handheld card skimming devices, but are fitted on an ATM. These devices are difficult to recognize as they are manufactured to match the look of the ATM it is installed in. There is also card trapping, which is a form of skimming. With this method, fraudsters don't use card trapping to copy the card data, but to make sure your card is trapped in the cash dispenser. They will seize the opportunity of you leaving and looking for help to get hold of your card. Cards can be trapped in ATMs in several ways. One method is to put a device in the machine and use tape, wire, or thread in order to hold a card in. Criminals afterwards retrieve cards using tweezers. The PIN can be obtained through observations or by putting an overlay device on the keypad that can record the PINs. Even cell phones are now used in committing card fraud. Armed with a smartphone and a thermal imaging attachment, criminals can easily steal your PIN. Because you leave behind a thermal signature when you press buttons, criminals can use a smartphone with a thermal imaging attachment to figure out your PIN. Because there is a time lapse between the time you press the first and the last buttons, it is easy to figure out what your PIN is. If a card is skimmed, bank customers are unaware. It means, therefore, that if victims fail to check their bank statements, a criminal could repeatedly withdraw money every day to the card's limit until it is cancelled or the bank's anti-fraud system determines something is fishy. The SAPRIC recent card fraud report showed that 1,377 handheld skimming devices were recovered by either SAPS or bank investigators over the last decade. There is also the so-called card not present, or CNP fraud. This mostly occurs in the form of phishing, where unsuspecting consumers give their details to illegitimate sites which collect details and use them in other transactions. Honorable Chairperson, there is no doubt that preventing this kind of crime involves a wide range of strategies extending from hard regulation, tapping into the law, to self-regulation using codes of practice and technological solutions. However, we must also be proactive in the prevention of this crime, and these are some of the practical measures that we must use in order to protect ourselves against this crime. This might sound as glitches, but they remain very important. For instance, before you throw money at an ATM, you should always inspect the machine and cover the number pad with your free hand when entering your PIN. And never accept help from strangers when using an ATM, as the Deputy Minister emphasized. The credit card companies are issuers, and issuers should also come to the party and do the following: ensure that the banks and/or police inspect the ATMs regularly, reinforce efforts to ensure compliance by retailers, continue to seek more secure technologies such as chip and one-time PIN and other eventual successors, work to ensure that everyone who handles credit card numbers has received the best possible training, and finally, think ahead of the challenges of credit card fraud by devising appropriate technology. Focusing on these issues will make an important contribution in our efforts to reduce card fraud. We cannot and should not allow criminals to deprive us of enjoying the benefits of e-commerce that are brought by using cards. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nakedi. Honorable members, we are still on the speakers list. We're not going to call speaker number 6, but we jump him and go to speaker number 7. Honorable Virgin Teve. He's not going to come.
Oh, thank you so much, Chair. I think all the speakers are appreciating that we are not actually entering, we are in an era of extreme connectivity. It's an era called an era of artificial intelligence. As we all know that every system of society will grow from the womb of another system. The fourth industrial revolution will surely grow from the womb of the third industrial revolution. What is quite interesting is that it is going to give us opportunity, but opportunity comes with a responsibility. Responsibility that when we engage, and Honorable Mkonki was quite eloquent about it when he said, it's a collective effort. The police will play their part, but consumers have a responsibility not to respond to unverified information, so that you don't fall prey to the unsuspecting processes. Honorable Chair, the week between the 12th to the 18th of November 2017 was International Fraud Awareness Week. Government and corporate mark this week yearly during the 3rd week of November. It encourages business leaders and employees to proactively take steps to minimize the impact of fraud by promoting anti-fraud awareness and education. Organizations such as the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners offer free resources and encourage creativity on how people can add their voices to the campaign to combat financial crime, fraud, and corruption. Fraud is not a new phenomenon in our society, but we have to acknowledge that it is changing faces. New technologies have radically changed the way that we do business, how we work and socialized, and increasingly we are living in an always on, always accessible culture. We are able to conduct many financial transactions on one mobile phone, and that has made us more vulnerable than ever before to fraud and corruption. We do not have the luxury as a nation to isolate ourselves from the era of digital connectivity. We have to embrace the fourth industrial revolution, while at the same time improving our capacity to fight against financial crime. The greatest concern, Chair, in the financial sector is the ever-evolving sophistication of tactics used by criminals. The card fraud statistic released by the South African Bank and Risk Information Center reflect an overall increase in card fraud in the year 2016, if you compare it to 2015. And we acknowledge that card fraud is a global and national phenomenon. In South Africa, the most affected provinces were alluded to by Honorable De Beer, correct information. Campaign against card fraud. Every South African, irrespective of their level of education or societal stratum, is a potential victim of card fraud. A gogo in the town of Subasfontein in Namakwa land who used the SASSA card will be potentially be defrauded just as easily as the CEO of a large multinational company. The only difference would be the scale, sophistication, and the impact of the person and their family. Honorable Mkonki, in the village where I was born in Taung, there's allegedly a former police officer in custody as we speak, who was caught defrauding SASSA recipients of their cards, having deducted all the money through the cards, and such a former police official is now arrested, and the police are in charge in terms of making sure that justice is served. This is just to indicate that it is not just by the look of things that people that you think you can trust are always trustworthy. Criminals are always on the lookout for gaps and weaknesses in the system in order to defraud the next unsuspecting victim. Every transaction we do is a potential opportunity for fraudster and schematist to defraud an unsuspecting persons. There has been noticeable proliferation of recent years of crimes such as car skimming or card cloning, whereby a device is used to fraudulently copy bank customers' details, stored on a magnetic stripe on a debit or credit card. In fact, one of our colleagues in the National Assembly was defrauded when the card was with her, in her possession, but they were able to deduct money. This is just to show the sophistication part of the whole thing. However, the majority of the skimming incidents in South Africa are recorded around the ATMs, and to a lesser extent at retail merchants when bank cards are presented for payment. It is time we heed the calls by the South African Police Service for greater and more dynamic collaboration between consumers, business, and law enforcement agencies. The financial sector service has to play a leading role by putting in place more robust risk mitigation measures to tackle card fraud. However, this needs a collective effort from all the pressure groups. The banks have done work in the recent years to add more security feature on the bank cards and the ATM. Honorable Monakedi was just indicating one of the OTP, which is one of the sophisticated model to identify whether is the bank responding to the correct person. However, the best weapon to prevent card fraud as well as crime in general is always awareness. And awareness, always. Our banks send out regular warnings to consumers about how to avoid falling victim to all manners of scams and fraud out there. These warnings come in a form of SMSs, emails, and even on ATM screens every time we go to withdraw money. These include some basic tips such as advice to customers to look out for things such as customer must look out never to let your card out of your sight, and all those things that other members have touched on. Many consumers of financial services do not bother to check their bank statement regularly for suspicious transactions. People often forget their cards at ATM machines, and some throw away their receipts carelessly after the transaction. While many do internet banking at public places such as the internet cafe without considering the possibility that ill intentions of some people around them might also tap into that possibility. Unfortunately, fraudsters exploit our natural inclination to trust of our fellow human beings. Campaigns have been launched in countries like the United Kingdom to raise awareness. The Be Card Smart Online initiative was launched in the UK to advise credit card customers about the danger of fraud. It came in response to findings that fraud carried out throughout the internet, phone and mail orders, shopping cost around $162 million, about 300 billion in our case, in the first 6 months of the year, and was about 60% increase over the period of the year. The campaign was created with all the associations in the UK, and as more and more of us are shopping online with our cards, we all need to take an active role in protecting our personal information, working together to combat the fraudsters. Adverts are placed in newspapers in the run-up to the busy Christmas shopping period, warning customers. What is clear is that in order to combat fraud and similar crimes, we need to encourage participation of our people in campaigns. Fraud Awareness Week, giving us the opportunity once a week in a year to focus specifically on fraud prevention. Some of the activities during the Fraud Week International we can learn from South Africa includes printing posters and leaflets that are downloadable from the websites. Business leaders must talk to employees and facilitate discussion. Lobby our councillors to take resolution in council meeting declaring support for the week. Lobby trade unions to also be part of the process, encouraging public representation as well as public figures to post on social media. Business such as fast food outlets and restaurants where many of us go to have meals must be encouraged to put fraud alert information. And Parliament and legislature, government departments and corporate sector could copy the example of the Orange Telecom, which developed a company-wide communication strategy, including how do they assist to the Fraud Awareness Week. Chair, on conclusion, we need a bit of common sense in order for us to fight fraud. We must never send money or give our card details to people we do not know. We must never give personal information like PIN numbers to people via emails or social media or even over the phone. If one receives a suspicious mail or social media link at work, they must contact IT support services immediately to verify it. We must learn to strengthen our password instead of using information that might be available publicly, like birthdays. Since we all have smartphones and tablets, which means that we can access the internet from just about anywhere with ease, we must keep in mind that the modern day fraudster too can have easy access to the information. Honorable Chair, Honorable Tereblanche says the state must do more. I think the state has done more already. In terms of legislative framework that is there to cut, and one of the members stood up here and said, South Africa is one of the best countries in terms of legislative framework guarding against that. Honorable Mkonki is correct that it's a collective effort by all, and Honorable Bauda, I think it's a discussion for another day. The fourth industrial revolution is not necessarily going to create jobs, it's going to displace labor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tebe. The Honorable Isaac. Honorable Isaac.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity. My fellow South Africans out there, it's always great to be on the podium and to debate about matters that matter to all of us. Every day we continue to be inundated with the declining economy and the recession that continues to take its toll on South Africans and consumers and families struggling to meet with their financial commitments from day to day. This further fuels the use of credit cards, which have become so freely available to consumers from various institutions looking to make lucrative profits. It is now a fact, colleagues and fellow South Africans, that some 50% of all credit active South Africans are not in good credit standing. I would like to point out that the National Credit Regulator receives the majority of its funding from this very institution, Parliament, whilst the balance of the funding is raised through credit bureaus and debt counselors, of course. Some 2 years ago, Chairperson, the then Public Protector launched an investigation into the National Credit Regulator and the National Consumer Tribunal. Honorable Ntebe, take note. Not much seems to have come out of these investigations thus far. Majority of our citizens continue to bear the brunt of illegal and exorbitant charges on credit cards month on month, year on year. Chairperson, the question arises now. How much, I ask, how much is being done to educate our population regarding consumers' rights and the National Credit Act in South Africa? How is this being addressed at national school level? These are questions we need to think and apply our minds about. Banks, furniture stores, retail clothing chains, major supermarkets continue endlessly to offer credit cards and extended loan repayments. Honorable Makue will be aware of that. Offering a minimum repayment of 10% monthly at ridiculously exorbitant interest rates of 20% plus, compounding monthly. I repeat, compounding monthly. Stolen cards can be reported by card holders, but a compromised card can be hoarded by a thief for an extended period before fraudulent use. The card holder may only discover fraudulent use after weeks or months when receiving a billing statement, which of course you may never receive as an ordinary South African in the rural areas due to the lackluster performance of the South African Post Office. Every day, colleagues, every day South Africans continue to shop online with the highest losses to credit card fraud being recorded in the tourism and hospitality services, including travel agents, hotel accommodation, and direct marketing occurring on our mobile phones daily. Again, my colleague, Honorable Makue, would understand where I'm coming from. It is not surprising that the South African Banking Risk Information Center, which Honorable De Beer has alluded to, revealed that Gauteng residents lost the most to credit card fraud compared to any other province in 2016, with losses amounting to 93.1 million rand. Take note, and Honorable De Beer confirmed, that the only province that had the reduction in losses was, of course, none other than the Western Cape, in his words, unquote. The Eastern Cape had, of course, the biggest increase in losses, with an increase of 148%, from 3.5 million in 2015 to some 8.7 million in 2016. And sadly, this was followed by the Northwest, Honorable Modlo Shuping, where losses increased by 127.9% from 2015 to some 2 million rand. It is thus high time, Chairperson, in conclusion, that this House calls for the reinstatement of properly trained and equipped specialized units, that this House also allocates more time for parliamentary oversight and begin to receive more regular feedback from the Ministers of Police and the Minister of Finance. Sadly, I don't see the Honorable Deputy Minister, who seems to have disappeared, because I wanted to alert him too.
Honorable Isaac, he did not disappear.
Fellow
I have a note
South
here.
Africans, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Isaac. Honorable Isaac, the Minister, Deputy Minister did not disappear. I have his note here. I'm still going to make some announcement. It's not all over you. Please take your seat. He is out of order. Honorable C.J. De Beer.
Honorable Chairperson.
Before you start, Honorable De Beer, Honorable Kaola.
Our Chairperson, you are out of order. You cannot debate with Honorable Isaac. From the chair, you debate with the member in the podium. It's wrong, Chair.
Okay, take your seat. Honorable Kaola, you are the one who is very wrong, because he's making some remarks by the Honorable Deputy Minister, who left a note on our table, who is not even in the House. So it's my responsibility to clear the confusion that might be caused by any member of the House. Honorable Isaac, what is the problem?
Chairperson, with due respect, I don't have a problem. You know I never have a problem.
Then take your
When I
seat.
support Honorable Kaula, you should withdraw debating with me.
Then take
I
your
think
seat.
you should apologize to me and withdraw.
Take your seat, Honorable Isaac. That was not a debate. You are totally out of order. Continue, Honorable De Beer.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Some members are sometimes mischievous, as you can see, and we are approaching next Tuesday. They will become more mischievous. Honorable Chairperson, all members, and thank you for the contributions in this debate. A very important debate where all members acknowledge and agree on the impact of card fraud and the extreme connectivity that we are facing and that environment that we are in, and must be more aware. Also highlighted by the Honourable Deputy Minister, the Hawks cracking down on fraud, and we would propose that they work close together with the bank's anti-card fraud systems. Also highlighted the sophisticated methods used by criminals. Yes, Honourable Tebe, Suwatsfontein is in my constituency. Yes, yes. Very poor people, but very proud people. Very proud people. Ek is trots op hulle. What is our responsibility, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, is to make our people more aware. Next week, we go into a constituency period. And this become part of our agenda because we have to report back what did we do the last quarter of 2017. And this must be part of that action plan. And through that program, connect better with our communities. Honourable Chairperson, the Financial Sector Regulation Bill was signed into law in the past few months. There's a need for Parliament to give the implementing agents time to implement the legislation. But, Honourable Chairperson, it's our responsibility to call the Reserve Bank, to call those different institutions, to come and account to Parliament on progress made referring to the Financial Sector Regulation Act. We must hold them accountable because that's our role in Parliament. Also providing stakeholders with an opportunity to present their practical experiences over the implementation of this Act and closer monitor implementation of the recommendations that Parliament made through its committees. Yes, Honourable Chair, we can do more if we work together and to achieve our targets and have a safer South Africa and the ideal one without criminals. We thank every member for its contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gebier. Honorable members, let me take this opportunity and thank the Deputy Minister in absentia. He did not just leave the house, but he left a note that he be excused because of other appointments. I would also want to thank the honorable members for availing themselves for this debate of today. Honorable members, you are requested to remain standing until the procession has left the house. The house is adjourned.